My story begins like this. I wanted to play Street Fighter 2 on the arcades again. I mean, I'd played it a lot on the home consoles, but originally played it in the arcades. I had Street Fighter 2 Turbo and was playing Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition a lot, but they just never had that arcade feel to them. Champion Edition did on the Sega Mega Drive only because it had that intro. Not to mention I never actually saw Street Fighter 2 Turbo in the arcades, so I was playing them a lot at this time. Playing it with friends whenever I could, and it was the only game anyone seemed to have. But you couldn't find an arcade machine anywhere. And no matter what, you couldn't tell me different. I knew the home consoles weren't like the arcade versions of the game. They just didn't have them big sprites, that big loud arcade cabinet. You know, you could hear it from a mile away and you would always see a queue of people playing it. So I pushed on, I kept playing. And not that it was boring, I mean I loved playing Street Fighter, but I just wanted to have a go on an arcade machine. It always seemed like a bigger event. You panicked more when you were losing money when you were playing. If you put your coins in, and especially in most arcades, they charge a bomb just for a few credits. Being a kid at this point, I didn't have that much money anyway, and that was a lot for me to actually play in the arcades. Going to an arcade meant I didn't get to buy a drink when I was out, or go to McDonald's or do something else. It was literally just the arcades. So it was kind of a big thing when you would spend all your money in an arcade for probably 20 minutes maximum. But it was just a fun time. Just seeing that skyscraper with Street Fighter 2 written on it, wow, it was perfect. Straight away I'd have to run over to it. I saw it in a few video stores, but not where I lived. It was once in a cab office. So you'd wait for a cab and I'd run in there and play Street Fighter while we were waiting. Just this cabinet itself, I didn't care which one, just as long as I could go up to that cabinet, put a coin in there and I was playing. Now the original arcade where I first played Street Fighter was an Angel called Vegas, but the only thing is, as there was fruit machines in there, it wasn't legal for anyone under 18 to go in there, so you just weren't allowed to do it. So there was this chip shop that used to have Sonic the Hedgehog, yes, Sonic the Hedgehog on an arcade machine. And it's now a Caribbean restaurant, but yeah, back then it was just a chip shop. And he told me he was getting Street Fighter in the following week. I couldn't believe it. So after school one time I went there with a friend. And I thought to myself, wow, we're finally going to get to play Street Fighter on the arcades again. I couldn't wait for it, so I remember leaving school going straight there. And he put the key inside the machine for me so I didn't have to pay. He was a nice guy like that. He didn't mind doing things like give you free chips every now and again too. So anyway, I saw that skyscraper thinking, wow, Street Fighter 2, I'm going to get to play it again on the arcade machines, and I can play it as long as I want. And then I thought, hold on a second, that title looks rusty. What is that? Oh, it's kind of like a rainbow. Anyway, let's see what this is like. So I scrolled along to notice everything seemed the same. The characters are all there, everything seemed fine, the music was okay, sounded loud. Had that sprites that looked different than what you would have on a home console. Just everything looked bigger. So I thought, oh, maybe it's just a different version. Anyway, here we go. The second I started playing, that's when I noticed the bullshit. This wasn't Street Fighter 2, this was Street Fighter Crackhead Edition. You could shower people with fireballs and they would home in on them as well. Not only that, you only had to press a direction and a punch button for the fireball. And you could turn into someone else. I stood there in shock thinking, what the hell am I seeing? Is this illegal or something? Of course it was. I only later found out that it was a hacked version of Street Fighter. I guess they were selling them on the cheap for people that couldn't actually afford them. No wonder a chip shop managed to get hold of it. I mean, look at this shit. It's a mess. It was very unbalanced. I mean, you could start a game and lose within a matter of seconds. And I'm talking against the computer. Everything was cheap. Other versions of it, you could throw multiple fireballs with a dragon punch. I mean, there's just no way out from that. So, standing there being shocked with a friend of mine, I continued playing. And there was a kind of charm to it. It was the arcade version of Street Fighter, only fucked up. I then went to find it in other places, including a video shop. I mean, look at this. I just turned into Honda and Blanca. You could turn into the whole roster of characters by just pressing the start button. If your opponent turned into somebody else during the fight, that would be who you've beaten. So you'd go there to fight Blanka and end up kicking Guile's ass. That was just craziness. I mean, the first time I saw Blanka throw a fireball and Balrog, I sat there thinking, Street Fighter's finished. I thought that the game had glitched itself out. Maybe it had enough. Maybe it was self-aware and forgot about playing by the rules. If you wanted to be cheap on this game, you could, very easily. I mean, people are cheap by throwing so many fireballs as it is, but on this, you could shower people with them, to the point where they just could not get out of it. I felt compelled to complete it with every character, just to see the endings, see if there was any other changes. There was quite a lot of weird things happened along the way. I mean, Bison didn't stand a chance. But then they could be cheap and turn into Blanka and just electrify you till you couldn't do nothing within a few seconds. So that could happen too. And I always wondered, on X-Men vs Street Fighter and Marvel vs Capcom, you could throw a fireball in mid-air. Did they take that from this? I mean, this was faster than the normal version of Street Fighter. Is that the reason they made Street Fighter 2 Turbo, to combat this? Well, you can now get the ROMs for this on MAME, as I would never expect to see an actual release version of this, no matter how charming it is. But that's the weird thing, despite all its weirdness, I kinda liked it, because it has a place in history with me and Street Fighter, and how you come across it. Everyone has their own little story if they've ever played this, and how shocked they was when they did, of the weirdness and fucking crackness this had on it when you played. So you'd add your coins in to play something that would have you standing there at the end in shock. You didn't know what to do or what to say. You would tell people for them not to believe you, to find out later and think, oh my god, it exists. I remember one time seeing someone playing a bonus stage during the credits. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was the barrels on fire and they were playing. I've never seen that since and may try and find it now, just to see if it was true, you know. Because I was a very young kid at the time, and a lot of craziness. I saw weirder arcades. There was a lot of weirder versions that I did see one time when I was at the beach and I played on an arcade. Well, this ending seems fine, but I have seen worse. One time I was playing it, I got to the end with Ryu and I saw the trees had decided to fuck off. Seriously, it's like they had enough. Like the game. I mean, look at this. I managed to capture it this time round, which I was quite surprised by. There's been so many hacks of arcade games throughout the years, but I think this is the most common and most remembered, as a lot of people played Street Fighter. I mean, as my school even had an arcade machine in there. Everywhere had an arcade machine later on in the years, but I played so many Rainbow editions. It was kind of weird. I didn't know whether to put my money in or not, to see what I'd come up against. Well, I'm going to leave you to the credits of Street Fighter 2 Rainbow Edition. Let me know what you've come across over the years, and thoughts on how you felt at the time, as I'm very interested about it. Even a location, whether it was a fast food restaurant, a video store, a bar, anywhere really. And feel free to check out my Street Fighter 2 Turbo random stories. Click on it here if you want. Anyway, this has been Alan the Urban Arcade. Until next time, see you later. Bye.